Well, this is always such a great time of the year to just pause and look back at the year we just come out of, and then look ahead to the year we're heading into, and kind of celebrate some of the highlights, and then anticipate some things that we just expect God to do in the life of our church and in our own lives individually. And so, Ryan, it's good to be with you today just to kind of talk about the fact that we've just come through another year. That's
another one, yes.
Staggering to think about just how quickly 22 went by. But it was a really, really good year in so many ways. And
100%.
Yeah. And so I'm just really grateful for all that God has done. And so we just want to take a little bit of time to talk about that, to bring some things to the surface that maybe many people in our church witnessed, they were a part of, they were aware of, and then there's maybe a lot of things that they didn't know went on, both maybe on the platform, but then even behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So...
No, love that, man.
Talk about it.
Yeah, let's do it. And let's just go ahead and jump right in. So looking back at 2022, I feel like it was a big year. A lot of things happened, like you said. So maybe I'm just going to throw something out and just have you respond to it of what's the first thing that comes to your mind. As we look at 2022, baptisms, over 400 baptisms happened in 2022.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
In light of even where we've been over the last couple of years, in 2020, I can't remember the number of baptisms, but it obviously dropped just because, we couldn't be in person with people. It's very difficult to do virtual baptisms.
Just me and you baptizing each other week in and week out.
So that number is really exciting to see. And a number of those baptisms came out of Rooted, which we'll talk about here in a bit. But just seeing that happen is like so thrilling.
It really was, man. I remember once I was at the West Campus and we were doing baptism spontaneous. You were leading through it, and people are getting baptized left and right, and we're done. Like, people are leaving. We're getting ready for the next service, and this family comes back in, and they had actually gotten in the car down the road, and their teenage daughter was like, I have to go back and get baptized. So they show up and they're like, hey, we were here, we left, we were hoping we'd get baptized. And I was like, yeah, we're going to do it again, second service. And they were like, we can't stay for second service. Can you do it now? And we're like minutes before service is starting. And I'm like, yeah, we can do that. And she goes in fully dressed, like in her clothes that she wore to church. She had just such a hunger and a want to get in there and to just experience that. With what was happening on the inside, she wanted, just that act. And it was a beautiful, beautiful moment, man.
Yeah,
but to think that 400 of those happened across our city, just here at our church, is wild.
Yeah. Those are some of my favorite ones. When people leave and then they turn around and come back.
It's like, man,
it's great.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep throwing stuff out. This was a big year. Midtown campus launched January 2022. And I know you got to get over there a few times throughout the year. So what did that mean to you after obviously, doing it once, COVID, and then coming back in a really big way this year?
Yeah, we had launched, for those that don't know, our Midtown campus just a few weeks before COVID. And then when COVID happened, we had to make some really tough decisions around just mostly resources, both people and dollars. And so we decided to, I think the phrasing that we used was push pause on that campus, just to reallocate some of those resources. Because a lot of that was out of our hand. Midtown's meeting in a rented facility.
Yep.
And so we didn't know when we'd be able to regather. And so that was a very painful decision to make. I remember the day that we had to make that decision was a really hard day for me personally and for our team. And so to be able to relaunch Midtown was just really cool, just to kind of come back around full circle on that. And we've got, Alex is just an incredible campus pastor. That team, they're doing such a great job. Yeah. And so to see that relaunch and then to kind of see the future that we have, we've got a desire to get them into a permanent facility in that area, and so hopefully we'll be able to take some steps towards that this next year. So it's exciting.
100%, man. And not going in sequential order here, or but just kind of going all over the place. But the next thing that's on my mind is men's night. We took another thing that we kind of took a pause from, a strategic one as past few years, but we got to bring those back this year. And maybe if you could, celebrate a little bit that night, but even the backstory of why these types of events mean so much to you and why you thought, now's the time to bring these back.
Yeah, the last men's night that we did was in 2016. And, those T-shirts from that night, you'll still see them around.
Yes.
Guys will be wearing them around town. And I'll have a number of men that'll come up to me that'll say that was their first experience with our church. I had a guy last night came up to me and he just said, "Hey, when did we do the last men's night?" And I said 2016. He goes, "Okay, so we've been in this church for 6 years," because he was marking it from that time. Dang. So the reason why we do these events is, I've said this to this team before, is that these are not cul-de-sacs, these are on-ramps. So we don't just do an event just to do an event, but this should be an on-ramp into a number of things. So an on-ramp into primarily, first and foremost, like a relationship with God. We're hopeful for that. Yeah. An on-ramp into the life of our church, an on-ramp into a group, an on-ramp into maybe a serving opportunity. So we're always looking for that. And then there's just something unique that happens when you have these evenings. We're going to do a women's night here later this month. But whenever you just get a whole group of men together, there's some things that, I can say to them as a pastor that I can't necessarily say in a mixed group, both for men and for women. Yeah. And so those types of events are something really special that happens. And, watching nearly 2,000 guys show up on campus, devour, what was it, 16 briskets?
Hundreds of pounds of meat.
Yes, lots of food that just disappeared in a very short period of time. And then to actually even watch their demeanor, whenever the first song, a lot of the guys were kind of standing there a little stoic, or the classic groomsman pose, And then by the end of the night, to see the guys expressive and to see the hundreds of guys that came forward to say, "Hey, I've never had a fatherly blessing prayed over me." Even men with like wrinkles and gray hair saying that. And so being able to pray that over hundreds and hundreds of men. And then to see even the weekends after that, where our worship services changed a bit because we saw the men leading out that had been here that night. Yeah. And so there's just something that I'm such a believer in those events that we do, as long as we keep our focus on the purpose of it. It's not just to have a good time. It's not just to get together and, have cool cars in the building and, eat good food. It's an on-ramp into something more. And so we'll be rolling those back this next year as well.
Dude, it was such a powerful, powerful night. And even your session teaching through, what does it mean to really be a man? And then that blessing that you walked everyone through, and then to receive that at the end of the night, and just hundreds of men coming forward. I remember praying with two guys, brother-in-laws, and they both wanted that blessing. They wanted to be the men that God had always intended them to be, and it was the first time they were asking for that, or even knew there was so much more that God wanted for them. And it was truly, I think, powerful is probably the best way that I can describe that night. Yeah,
and it was pretty wild that you did an amazing job emceeing that night. By the way,
thank you. I did my part. You
really did. It's not an easy thing to do, and I was pretty taken aback by the fact that you showed everybody the picture of your baptism,
man,
which maybe we can put on this. This morning, that everybody can see it.
I'm up for that. That was a picture, many, many years ago. And I'd say we do it before and after. We're doing great.
We're aging well. We're aging like fine wines, I think.
100%.
Both of us. Yeah. God is good.
But yes. And I think that was another thing that really hit me too, of just, standing in that room, being on the stage and knowing, years ago I was sitting there and then convicted of a same challenge, very similar to what you were putting out there, of what it meant to really follow Jesus, and to be a part of it from another side is just, it's remarkable, man.
Yeah. So it's great.
Love it. And then want to switch gears here a little bit and talk more about some of the kind of discipleship efforts that we really put into place this year. Once again, something that you've said over and over again, like you have really no intentions of growing necessarily a big church, but you want to be a part of true disciples coming to know Jesus more and more. And we've been looking for different ways, very similar to even when I think you're talking about with Men's Conference, of an on-ramp to how do we help people get onto this path to look more and more like Jesus. And one of the ways that we started doing that this year, and in a big way, was Rooted. And for those that don't know, would love for you to give a little bit of a pitch of, once again, what is Rooted? Why did we think it would be such a good thing for our church in this season?
Yeah. I mean, I've been familiar with Rooted for a number of years. It actually originated in Kenya with a church there. And then there's a church on the West Coast known as Mariners that actually took it, brought it to the West, kind of rewrote it. And so, we're friends with the team at Mariners and have been out there to see what they've been doing through it. And so we've been kind of kicking the tires on Rooted for a while and decided to, roughly about a year and a half ago, that we wanted to roll this out to our church. And so all of our staff kind of did the pilot groups. We were in a Rooted group together just to go through this and just found it to be exactly as the name states. It just helps provide a root system to your faith, which is so important. When you think about a tree's root systems, when there's a storm that comes through, if the tree's roots aren't very deep, they're not intertwined with other trees, and they're going to fall. And I think that's what COVID showed us, not only in our church, but even in churches all around the country, is that, when a crisis hit, I think one of the things that we recognize is that it was unfortunate that we realized that we had maybe a big crowd, but did we have disciples? And I think that just for us just to look at that, to see 30% of our church maybe peel away and never come back, but our giving never dipped, showed me that it was maybe God pruning his church, that maybe, hey, let's not just develop a crowd. Let's not just gather crowds. Let's make disciples, resilient disciples that'll still follow Jesus even in the midst of the crisis. And I'm not suggesting that everybody that left our church walked away from the faith. I know that a lot of people landed in other churches or they moved or whatever. But I think that it really challenged us to say, hey, let's develop. Let's not just grow wide, let's also grow deep. And those things don't need to be mutually exclusive. We don't just say, hey, we're going to grow wide at the lack of depth, or we're going to grow deep because we don't care about reaching people. We care about both. We care about reaching lots and lots of people because there's so many people, now more than ever. There's more non-Christians alive today than ever in the history of the world. So we want to reach as many people as possible. I'm never going to hang a no vacancy sign on the front of our church. But I'm also not going to try to develop systems just to grow a church. For the sake of growth. But we're going to do everything that we can to reach people. But when we do, we want to provide a track where they understand why they believe. And we're providing a root system for them to be resilient disciples. And so I'm thrilled about Rooted. We had 1,000 people participate in it.
1,000 people.
I think we've already got close to 500 people already signed up for this winter session of Rooted. And if you haven't had a chance to get signed up as you're listening to this, sign up for it. I want to encourage people to do that. 37 baptisms that came out of of Rooted from that. The Rooted celebration night was phenomenal. It was a Wednesday night here at the church. And it was so cool to see, almost 800 people here, I think, for that they were just all in.
Yes.
There was nobody, slacking that night. They were all leaning in on it.
And I'll tell you what I loved about it. It honestly made me think of youth ministry days when I used to serve in youth ministry, in the sense that this celebration, we had a bunch of people come forward, like you said, and get baptized. And the people that were there were so excited that they didn't stay in their seats. So when someone in their group was getting baptized, everyone flooded down to go up front, and they circled the baptistry. And as they came up, everyone was just cheering and going nuts, almost as like they were getting baptized themselves. And it was just a beautiful scene of this is it. They're getting it. They are truly rooted in community and what God has for them. And just to tag on that endorsement of, if you haven't been through Rooted, do it. Even if you've been around church for a while and you're like, is this for me? I'm telling you, it is. I just went through it in the fall of this year. And what I love about it is there's a lot of good discipleship stuff, but tagging all of that content and then with experiences. So Rooted's 10 weeks, but it has 3 experiences: a prayer experience where you get to spend an extended time with God, a serving experience where you go outside the walls and we partner with someone local here. And for me, it was amazing. We partnered with Isaiah 117, this organization that helps create temporary housing for kids that have been removed from their homes and are going into the DCS system. So they can house them here for about 3 days. And we got to go in this abandoned building. I felt like Chip Gaines. Seriously, I'm kicking down walls, knocking stuff down. And then to know at the end of the day what this space is going to be used for, it was a really cool thing. And then you get an experience of how do I share my story? One of probably the most intimidating things for most people of like, how does my life and my faith intersect with the people that I love and I work with and I'm with on a regular basis? So yeah. Can't recommend enough. Rooted 2023, get into it. And 42 new groups launched from Rooted.
That,
they started 10 weeks, but then they said, no, we want this longer. And so that's been pretty cool too, with 57 baptisms, 42 new groups launching out of it. And that's, a lot of that relational side that you talked about. And, we are Trader's Point of, we want to help people find life-giving relationships. And I feel like Rooted does that. Want to switch gears?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to switch now, and let's talk about, and this one to me, I think is one of the ones that a lot of people are going to perk up on this side of just all the ways that we've made an impact as a church here in the city, but then around the world as well. So I just want to celebrate a little bit and then get you to just kind of speak into what it was like and how it hits your heart even in this moment of, so for some of those that know, our outreach team has just exploded over the past few years. And, Shannon's doing an unbelievable job with FAM, our family and adoption ministry. So we have over 200 volunteers helping us meet the needs of vulnerable children here, the resource center, all of that. I know earlier in the season, we got to actually go out and sit down in the barn and to take a look at that resource center and know that week in and week out, there are people all over the city coming here to get crucial supplies so that they can take care of their families and keep their families together.
Yeah.
And then we're on the heels of this now, but an initiative that you just led, the Christmas Impact Project through Shepherd Community Center. This chance that we get to do to partner with a local organization to serve the Near East Side of Indy. We're talking 10,000 gifts. Like, walk me through like what's going through your mind, why you decided this is where we wanted to go as a church, and maybe even some of the impact that you've already seen as to us going forward.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is our third year to do this. And,
sounds right.
We used to do like the Giving Tree like a long time ago, which is a similar concept. But I like this partnership with Shepherd. We really believe in the people at Shepherd and what they're doing, and they open up a Christmas store so that way families that are in need can actually go and it's almost like they're shopping for gifts. So they can do so with dignity. They can pick out the gifts for their kids. They can take them, they can wrap them. Instead of us just like showing up at a door with maybe a bag full of gifts that are just kind of random. And so that way it is really providing a source of like dignity and help for people. And I've really been encouraged by how our churches just wanted to jump in. I mean, every year, I think our vision was too small a couple of years ago. And then last year, I think, hey, we can inch this forward. I think this year it's inching forward again. I think it's just getting bigger and bigger every year as people, and it's really encouraging to me as a pastor just to see how excited people have gotten about it. And we've had a number of people just come up and, hey, I want to help. And how do we, people out of state, it's like, how do we do this? And so we're really encouraged by it.
Same, man. And I heard, 10,000 gifts is what we committed, and they're thinking that would roughly serve 600 families on the Near East Side of Indy that, we're looking at a very different Christmas if it hadn't been for, the generosity of a lot of our people. I know it even pulled together a lot of people at our campuses to come together, even like small businesses and local organizations saying, hey, how can we pull our resources together and make a really big impact in this way too, which was, like I said, just our people catching fire and seeing the urgency of it has been pretty cool. And you were kind of, towards the end of the year, it was like leading one initiative after the next, because right before that, you did the child sponsorship event with Mohi. So, man, we'd even love to hear a little bit about how that one got started and then what you saw that weekend, and maybe even to catch everyone up to date on what was the final results of what we were able to do that weekend. Yeah.
I don't know of anything that requires as little of an investment. It's like $40 a month, which obviously I don't want to make too light of a $40 a month. That's a lot, but a lot of us spend a lot of that on coffee. But for $40 a month, I've never seen anything move the needle to make as much of an impact as child sponsorship. And I've been kind of involved in this for about 13 years or so, both with Mohi, and then we also partner with Compassion. So we do child sponsorships in South America with Compassion. We do child sponsorships with Mohi in Africa, particularly Kenya. And so we hadn't done a sponsorship since, when was the last one with Compassion? I think it was 2016, 2015, 2016. Yep. So it's been a bit. And I think we did 5,000 child sponsorships on Easter Sunday back then with Compassion. And so we kind of ran this back with Mohi. To do it. And I was really thrilled. I think we had over 1,500 people that chose to jump in and do child sponsorships, which the leadership of Mohi, if people recall, Mary and Wallace Kamau were with us. They were thrilled. They said that was the that was the highest child sponsorship since COVID. Dang. And the second highest ever in their history. Wow. So, we were just really thrilled by the fact that our people jumped in. I mean, you think about, over 1,500 kids just got sponsored, and the ripple effects that that's going to create is really thrilling.
No, it's incredible, man. And it was cool, to be on both sides of it. And even like some of our philosophy of outreach, we don't just want to send money to places or receive, we want to not just have transactional partnerships, but relational ones. And, right before summer, I actually got to go over there for the first time to visit Mohi and to be in Kenya, from Nairobi to Kilifi, and to see the legacy that Traeger's Point has over there. Like, I remember they would introduce me to someone and like, hey, this is Ryan, and like, hey, and like, he's from Traeger's Point, and immediately, like, people, there was just so much gratitude and thankfulness from what has been built there through the generosity of this church, from centers to churches to new spaces, and how they've been able to expand. And now even with our partnership on a leadership development side, because they have these huge goals of they want to reach 100,000 kids and have 100 churches and 100 schools. And now we get to partner with them, not only financially and not only through child sponsorship, but also through how God's blessed us here through leadership development. And what does it look like to raise up leaders that will be able to kind of move this vision forward? So it was cool to see like a threefold partnership really being played out all in 1 year.
Yeah. And I just want to encourage anybody watching or listening to this right now that if you maybe feel like you're in a little bit of a rut spiritually, go to Kenya. Like, go to Kenya and spend like 3 or 4 days with Marion Wallace and Missions of Hope, and let them walk you around, let them show you the thing, and it'll humble you. Yes. It'll excite you. It'll just, it's like a shot of adrenaline into your faith as you just see what's happening over there. And it just shows you collectively what we can accomplish together when we just all come together. And so I'm excited about that partnership and what's going to happen in the future. I can't wait to get back over there myself. It was 2019 the last time I was there, so it's time for me to get back over.
Wow. Man, so much, and that's just a glimpse, very high level of what happened.
The list of our partnerships is pretty extensive. Like, we just don't have enough time in this recording to talk about it, but I'm really excited about just the organizations that we're coming alongside of and the difference that we're attempting to make throughout the world. And you said it, Shanna leads this whole ministry. She's doing such an amazing job with it. So
that's so good, man. So, and maybe this is unfair to ask of you, but as you look back on 2022, how would you tie a bow on it? Maybe what's the word or the phrase or just the sentiment that comes from your heart as we're at the end of this year, and as you look back at, all that God did over this past year? What's the thing that comes to the surface?
It might sound kind of cliche, but I mean, honestly, I'm just very grateful. Especially given the few years that we've come through, and just how challenging they were, to kind of see what's emerging, out of that. And I think I've said this publicly up front. I know I've said it to you and to some of the team, is that there just seems to be a really healthy, sweet spirit in our church right now. And I'm really grateful for that. I hope that it continues to last a long time. And it's easy, I think, as leaders to hear maybe the criticisms or the negatives, but there's so many positives, and there's so many things that God's doing. And so I'm really, I think I'm just kind of recognizing, I have said this publicly, I kind of feel like I'm at halftime in my ministry here. I'm not presuming anything. I'm not saying that I'll be here another 15 years, because that's not entirely up to me. But I'm feeling very like introspective right now. Like, okay, if this is halftime, when you think about all the big games that have happened, a lot of stuff happens in that third quarter, that's big. And so it's like, okay, God, what do you want to do in and through us next? And I don't want to dictate that, but I also don't want to be asleep. Like, I want my surfboard ready, send a wave, let's ride it. And so I'm really grateful.
That's good, man. And I think one of the things that I saw in 2022, and it's something you highlighted a lot in different meetings and with the staff, was there's a momentum shift. It even comes out with the way people are sitting in the auditorium, the way they're leaned in, the change in worship. There's this momentum, this wave that we feel like we're getting to ride. And so as we are jumping into 2023, everyone's on the edge of their seats. Like, what can you give us as to, hey, what can we look forward to in 2023? What are you ready to share of what we can expect?
Well, I'm anticipating it to be like a really big year. Like I feel it's kind of like that concept of, Jim Collins wrote about this years ago in his book, the principle of the flywheel, and I feel like we kind of got that flywheel kind of moving again. And so the momentum hopefully is going to pick up. And as I'm looking at just the schedule, I'm excited about, what God's got in store for us. And I've been able to just kind of get away and to kind of do some just prayer and planning and vision casting. And God, where are you leading us as a church? So we'll be casting lots of vision for what God could do in and through our church in the next 2 to 3 years. Sermon series wise, we're going to kick off the year with a short little 3-week series called Letters from My Future Self. So I remember this book that I read when I was in middle school. I checked it out of the public library. It was called Me, Myself, and I.
Oh.
And it was this fascinating book where the character gets in a time machine. It faces a problem, gets in a time machine, and goes back in time to meet up with their old self.
Okay. And
And then the two of them get in the time machine and go back to meet up with even the younger version of themselves, and then the three of them solve a problem. And I was fascinated by that whole concept. And so even in this message series, I've actually had this question asked of me by a lot of our younger leaders at times, like, hey, if you could give yourself any advice, like when you were in your 20s or whatever, what would it be? So this kind of concept of what would it be like to get a letter from my future self? And so we're just going to kind of walk through maybe the 2 or 3 things that it's very personal for me. What would my future self want to say to old Aaron? So we'll be walking through that, and then right after that, we're going to do a extended series in the book of Philippians, which is just a book of joy, just joy and gratitude, and so we'll walk through that collectively together as a church. That'll lead us all the way up through Easter.
That's so good, man. Excited for 2023. And then looking back at 2022, I know me and lots of those listening, man, thanks for your leadership. Appreciate where you took us in 2022. Trust you, man, going into 2023. Any closing remarks as you kind of close us out here?
Well, I'd love to just wrap up with a passage of scripture that I actually read during our We Are Traders Point series. And I think it's just a great summary of just our past and then kind of where we're headed into the future. Isaiah the prophet talks about in chapter 43 where God was recalling to the Israelites how he had delivered them from Egyptian slavery. It's a pretty impressive story, where he splits the Red Sea, they walk through on dry land. Incredible.
Yeah.
And God's kind of like, yeah, you know what? Don't dwell on that. Forget all that. And he says this in verse 19. He says, "For I am about to do something new. See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? I will make a pathway through the wilderness. I will create rivers in the dry wasteland." And I love that as we just look at the legacy and the past, the long-term past of our church, and then even just the immediate past of the past year. And let's give glory to God for it. Let's be encouraged by it, but let's not dwell on it. God's about to do something new. And that's really exciting. So, and I can't wait to be a part of that with you and with everyone else that's a part of our church family.
Let's do it.
Let me pray. God, we just are so grateful to you for the amazing things that you've done in the past year. And now we just look forward in eager anticipation to what you're going to do in a brand new year. And so, God, I pray that there would literally be thousands of lives that would be changed, that there would be hundreds of people that would come to know you for the first time, that collectively together as a church, we would rally together and just be in expectation of the new things, the exciting things, the incredible things that you want to do through us. Because right now, this world is in a tailspin. It's either Christ or chaos. And we're seeing that right now. And so this is the world that you have made. It makes no sense if we don't understand it through that lens. And so, God, I just pray that you would empower us, you would fill us. I pray that you would provide a sense of unity and generosity and alignment in our church so that we can bring as many people as possible to know you and then grow them deeper in their faith and trust in you. So that way we can withstand the storms and the crisis that will come, because we know they will. And we just ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.